Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinatha Radha Gopinatha Shri Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jam Vishnupad Param Sivarajkachara Shrotar Shatas Divine Grace Abhaijan in the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jam Grantarachima Bhagavatam Ki Jam Antakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jam Nitya Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu, Text 27. Mukena lokarti harasmitena. Mukena lokarti harasmitena. Mukena lokarti harasmitena. Parispurat kundala manditena. Parispurat kundala manditena. Shunayatena darabimbabasa. Shunayaten adarabimbabasa. Pratyarhayantam sunasena supra. Pratyarhayantam sunasena supra. Mukena lokarti harasmitena. Parispurat kundala manditena. Shunayatena darabimbabasa. Pratyarhayantam sunasena supra. Mukena lokarti harasmitena. Parispurat kundala manditena. Shunayatena darabimbabasa. Pratyarhayantam sunasena supra. Mukena lokarti harasmitena. Parispurat kundala manditena. Shunayatena darabimbabasa. Pratyarhayantam sunasena supra. Mukena, by gesture of the face. Loka artihara, vanquisher of the distress of the devotees. Smitena, by smiling. Parispurat, dazzling. Kundala, earrings. Manditena, decorated with. Shunayatena, acknowledging adara of his lips, bimba reflection, vasa rays, pratyarhayantam reciprocating, sunasena by his pleasing nose, subrva and pleasing eyebrows. Translation and purpose by His Divine Grace of Isvaresvara Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. He also acknowledged the service of the devotees and vanquished their distress by his beautiful smile. The reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, was so pleasing because it dazzled with the rays from his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. Purport. Devotional service to the Lord is very much obliging to him. There are many transcendentalists in different fields of spiritual activities, but devotional service to the Lord is unique. Devotees do not ask anything from the Lord in exchange for their service. Even the most desirable liberation is refused by devotees, although offered by the Lord. Thus the Lord becomes a kind of debtor to the devotees, and he can only try to repay the devotees' service with his ever-enchanting smile. The devotees are ever satisfied by the smiling face of the Lord, and they become enlivened. And by seeing the devotees so enlivened, the Lord himself is further satisfied. So there is continuous transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees, by such reciprocation of service and acknowledgement. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Kananchana Shadakaya Chikshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadate Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming or listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam class, where we are in a beautiful section of after we heard how Lord Brahma took so much endeavor to finally now get the mercy of the Lord, by how he was first trying by his own senses and as well as by empirical speculation. Like we know there's those three kinds of evidence, right? Pratyaksha, direct experience by our senses. It's called Anuman, right? The second one, with empirical analysis, and the third one, the most powerful one, is Shabda Praman, is hearing. So first he tried the other two by speculating, well, where am I, like what's my origin and all of that. And then he tried to use his senses going down the lotus stem from the lotus on which he was born, from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, but he couldn't reach, and Prabhupada explained there that because by one's endeavor alone one can go nearer to the Lord, but you can never reach the Lord. And so that's what Lord Brahma realized there as well. So he went back up, and then by hearing the instruction of Tapa, he understood, I have to undergo tapasya to get the mercy of the Lord. That's what the Lord wants from me. And so he did that for 100 of his years, which is his whole lifespan, as Kamsaya Sena Prabhu was explaining. That shows like how much patience and determination we should have in devotional service and full faith. That even like Lord Brahma, it's amazing, he practically spent his whole life for that, but obviously it doesn't mean that after that then the Lord said, yeah, now you got my mercy, but now your life is over and you gotta take birth again. No, he gave him again the full lifespan and fully empowered him to do this amazing devotional service of creation. And now in the recent verses we heard how he got the Lord's darshan, and like Lord Brahma says I believe it's Lord Brahma who says this as example of how he felt like after, I think it's after Brahma Vimohan Lila, where he tried to exhibit his potency by stealing the cowherd boys and then admitting when he saw Krishna's potency, especially after he showed him that all those cowherd boys and calves exhibited the 400 Vishnu form, because they were all expansions of Krishna, as we know. So, and Lord Brahma said that he felt like a glowworm in front of the sun. So, I have to say I also feel a bit similar after the last few classes where we heard so beautifully by the devotees about the Lord's beauty. I'm feel not qualified on speaking such a elevated topic, but I'll take your blessings and try to also continue on that. So it's a very beautiful verse today actually, like starting off with the first line where it says Loka Arti Hara, which means in the word to word, vanquisher of the distress of the devotees. Like Loka means people, Arti we also know from Bhagavad Gita, famous word Chatur Vidapachantamam Chanasukritam Arachana. Arto Arta itself means wealth, but then and the first one, Arta means the distressed ones. Those four kind of people who approach the Lord, one of them is distressed, Arto Artati. Arto Artati, how does it go? Chignasu Jnanicha Bharatashaba. Yeah. So, Loka Arti, so the distress of all the people, and Hara, the Lord is the vanquisher of this. And the next word, then, how is he doing that? Smitena, simply by smiling. And that itself is like really amazing if you think about it. Like, you see how people are trying so hard with so much endeavor nowadays, so advanced in technology and different kinds of modern science and economic development, but we see that they can't avoid the distress. Like like it might be for some time on a gross level that you get more physical comfort, but then that's why people get then their karma in the form of more and more mental distress. And like Lord Kapila also mentions in one verse similar, that actually those materialistic people, they're simply engaged in always trying very hard to counteract the miseries, and they're so foolish that this act of trying to counteract miseries, that itself they take as happiness. So that's their happiness. Yet here we see how Krishna, how does he vanquish the distress of anyone who gets the beautiful darshan of his beautiful smile, all of the distress is vanquished simply by his smiling. So that also shows how he is indeed the supreme enjoyer, that he doesn't, he can vanquish the distress of all the living beings, not by having to endeavor for it, but just by smiling. And so that's one beautiful point we hear here right from the first line. And so Prabhupada in the first half of the Prabhupada, he focuses on the, like, yesterday when I got to, I got to give class today, so looking what verse it is. When I saw in my Bhagavatam here that the Purport, I could tell that it's a Purport that I like, because almost like half the lines I have underlined. So it's really such a beautiful Purport Prabhupada is giving here, how he describes the nature of pure devotional service and the amazing reciprocation between the Lord and his devotees. And so in the first half he focuses on the aspect of that, like I think Krsna Prabhu also recently mentioned about, like famously Prahlad Maharaj, in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev and Lord Nrsimha, urges him to take a benediction. He tells, how can I do? I'm your devotee. If I would ask anything from you in exchange for my devotional service, then I wouldn't be no better than a merchant. So that's the theme of the first half here, that devotees do not ask anything from the Lord in exchange for their service. And that's why Prabhupada starts off the purport actually, that devotional service to the Lord is very much obliging to Him. There are many transcendentalists in different fields of spiritual activities, but devotional service to the Lord is unique. And why is it unique? Because like we know in all the other processes, even though they might bring one towards the Lord, like by refraining from material activities which entangle you more and more, and which, especially sinful activities where you get more and more suffering and more into passion and ignorance. So they can get some understanding and approach towards the Lord, but they can never fully reach Him. Why? Because they still have some other motive other than actually really understanding and pleasing Krishna. So, like we know the yogis, for example, they are after mystic perfections, but like we heard in Uddhava Gita recently, how there's actually so many different mystic perfections, which if someone from now today reads that without any prior knowledge, you'll just be blown away and think, well, that sounds like fantasy, right? That's something like that is even possible for a living entity to have. Like most people wouldn't even think that God can do something like that. So yogis are generally diverted by those things, and whereas jnanis, we know, they simply want to be free from misery and think they get their happiness simply by merging into the Brahman effulgence or into Krishna's body even, which is even worse. And obviously others who, like karma yogis, they also simply they do whatever they like, first of all, still in a more regulated way, in favorable way, but then they understand that, okay, rather than in karma or karma kanda, where they do also follow regulations, but they directly simply do it for enhancing the sense gratification, whereas a karma yogi understands that simply brings more and more suffering, entanglement. So that's why they offer the fruit to Krishna. Or they might not even understand that Krishna is the Lord, or that there is a personality, but they simply want to get rid of their entanglement, of their misery. So that's karma yogis. And obviously then lower than that is even more selfish desires. So everywhere you'll see there's always a motive, and that's the unique thing here. Prabhupada points out that devotional service to the Lord is unique. Why? Then because in the next sentence I said before, devotees do not ask anything from the Lord in exchange for their service. Even the most desirable liberation is refused by devotees, although offered by the Lord. And like, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited this very nicely, which we pray every morning, that Chanmani Vishware Bhavata Bhaktira Haituki Tvaye. Birth after birth I'm ready to take, as long as I get the opportunity to render devotional service to you, Krishna. So, I'll try to focus on this first point, part half of the purport. So, how then does like Prabhupada mentions here, that the Lord becomes actually a debtor to the devotees? So sorry, I haven't read that here again, so that's the next sentence. Thus the Lord becomes a kind of debtor to the devotees, and He can only try to repay the devotees' service with His ever-enchanting smile. So, like if you think about it, it's also quite amazing that like devotees, they give up everything, they surrender fully, which means like famously of course in the most elevated devotees, in the case of the gopis, we know how they while in their relationship or in their position as gopis, generally they are even though they have this intense ecstatic love for Krishna and always want to be with him, the arrangement is such by Yogamaya that generally, like during the day, they cannot freely express their love to Krishna, because there's the elderly gopis and gopas, and so they're always fearful of that, to even mention Krishna's name, speak about Krishna, or look at him. So, whereas we see then like for the Ras Lila, in the dead of night, simply by hearing Krishna's flute, they leave behind their husbands, their families, forget all about these fears, and run after Krishna. So, we see in those cases exhibited like this highest degree of surrender and of giving yourself to Krishna. But how does Krishna repay them? He doesn't repay them by any kind of opulences. Like, I was thinking in one sense that this shows also how that sweetness is greater than opulence, than Aishvarya. Because, for example, in the case of devotees in Vaikuntha or in Dwarka, like Lakshmi Devi and all the queens of Dwarka, that they have a lot of opulence also, simply by being with the Lord, because Krishna is the supremely opulent one. And whereas the gopis, they don't even like to see opulence. And so how does he repay? We hear here in today's purport and in the verse that simply by smiling at the devotee is fully satisfied. So this shows like how sweet Krishna is and how superior that is to opulence. That simply the greatest devotees, those who give him the most, how does he repay? Not by any kind of other opulence or thing. He simply has to smile at them, exhibit his sweetness, his beauty, and they are fully satisfied by that. Of course, like having given this comparison, I don't want to say that other devotees, other pure devotees, like the queens and Lakshmi Devi, that they are up for doing devotional service for the sake of getting opulence. Of course, they don't want opulence either for themselves, but their mood with Krishna obviously is that they want to see him as the supreme Lord, as the supreme opulent one. So that rasa is simply different there. But still it shows how that those devotees who are even greater than them, having even greater love, that they don't even want that. They want to have nothing to do with opulence. They simply want Krishna's sweetness, Krishna's smile. So then another point in today's verse, we hear also about the beauty of Krishna's eyebrows. And I was thinking, like we heard also in yesterday's verse about Krishna's lotus feet, or more specifically even his toenails and fingernails, right? Yeah, that they appeared like the petals of a flower. So, the sentence there was, the splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. So we see in like those kind of bodily parts, like the feet and even the toenails, or I was thinking also similar the eyebrows, brows, right? That for a mundane person you would never think of those kind of bodily parts as being able to be actually beautiful. But we see here that, for example, with the eyebrows, it's mentioned in the Shastras that simply by looking at Krishna's eyebrows, all our lust gets vanquished. So, in other words, they are so beautiful, more beautiful than anything material, the most beautiful material things could be, so that you get taste for seeing Krishna's eyebrows rather than losing taste for seeing anything material. So all your lust goes away in that way. And similar like mentioned with even, I was thinking, if you simply take darshan of Gopinath's lotus feet, like we get little experience we get at ourselves. Like today, Gopinath at least was during darshan arti and kirtan, mercifully showing his lotus feet also. Sometimes I think like there's there's kind of a transcendental competition between our eagerness to see Gopinath's lotus feet and the eagerness of the flowers to be close to Gopinath's lotus feet, because many times the flowers are covering our vision of his lotus feet to our misfortune. But yeah, even if you simply look at his lotus feet alone, it's you can't just keep looking. It's so beautiful, and it gives you such bliss. So what to speak of them pure devotees, they can, simply by looking at his lotus feet eternally, they get eternally unlimited happiness. So, whereas for us on the material plane, you would never even think that feet is something that can be beautiful. So how amazing is the Lord, how amazing is his beauty. And whereas, also, but at the same time as conditioned souls, like we are very much proud of our beauty, and like we heard recently also when Kamsara Prabhu had in that purport, when he gave class, that when there was the comparison given of the Lord's beauty to the Coral Mountain and with the Golden Summit and all of that, and so Prabhupada mentioned there that material beauty is not false. It's also so beautiful, but it just gives us some indication of like how much more beautiful is than the Lord, who is the origin of all the beauty, of whom all of that is simply a reflection. So our beauty, it's also beautiful, but I mean, obviously nothing at all in comparison to the Lord's beauty. And on top of that, we know it's very much temporary, so short-lived. As every day the body gets older and less beautiful, and then till you get pretty much ugly later in life, and until we lose the body altogether. So, but still, we feel proud looking in the mirror. Like I heard that in a lecture recently from His Grace Radhesham Prabhu. I found that quite a simple point which I haven't thought about like before. That actually, if you even as devotees, when we may still have this tendency of like looking into the mirror and thinking, kind of handsome, like so, and I put the tilak so nicely, maybe shaved head and all of that. So that, but what it results with is if we consider our body beautiful, then naturally it's very natural then to think, to look at see other material bodies also as beautiful, and think, I guess it would be nice if those two bodies could unite. And so it, even not directly appreciating other material bodies' beauty, but even your own body, in that way also leads to lust actually. And doesn't takes us away from appreciating the real beauty of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. And and like, what are we proud of? Our body is simply a bag of basically mucus, blood, bile, all of those nasty substances. But how are they still beautiful? Because by the grace of Maya, she packs it nicely together into such a body, simply by this thin layer of skin. That's why we say lust is like skin disease, because actually it's simply by sense of touch that you are after, and also skin is what gives this temporary beauty. But at the same time I was thinking it also still shows that, again, that personalism is more, or like persons are superior to, the personal aspect is superior to the impersonal aspect, because you might appreciate like the most scenic beauty of some beautiful mountains or a beautiful beach at sunset, but if another beautiful person walks by, you can still immediately get completely bewildered and just forget all about the beauty of nature, and all you want is this beauty of that person, of that body. So, as we know, that's the most powerful way of how Maya bewilders the conditioned souls, through the attraction between the opposite sex. Like Lord Kapila Dev famously describes this in third canto also. Like one verse is Na tatasya bhaven moho bandhaschanya pasangataha yat yoshit sangha tata pumso yata tatsangi sangataha. So where he explains that there's, or rather I just try to tell the translation, which is quite beautiful, striking. And so it says, the infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. And obviously we know that's from the viewpoint of males, of men, but that goes the same way for the other way around, females to males. So yeah, but again, all of that can simply be overcome by seeing, for example, the Lord's beautiful eyebrows. And another point I was thinking is how I sometimes think when I take darshan or in that when we look at Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, we get the same kind of feeling in the heart of bliss and joy that we get when chanting attentively or in a nice kirtan or in whatever devotional activity we engage, and this shows how all of that is not material, including the Lord's form here as Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, because all of that is a completely distinct, different experience from what we ever had before in our material life. And I always like to meditate on that, like how, like that's why what says like it's bhakti yoga, that's why it is a scientific process, but you need to first assume that okay, the knowledge from the shastras is correct, and then you apply it, and then you can actually directly perceive it. So that's one way of how we can directly perceive it, and how we can understand that the Lord's beauty, for example, as we discuss here, is not material. And so I'll now read the second part of the purport again, where Prabhupada is focusing on now this amazing reciprocation, the dynamic between the devotees and the Lord in terms of his smiling. So because right before that, thus the Lord becomes a kind of debtor to the devotees, and they can only try to repay the devotees' service with his ever-enchanting smile. The devotees are ever satisfied by the smiling face of the Lord, and they become enlivened. And by seeing the devotees so enlivened, the Lord himself is further satisfied. So there is continuous transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees by such reciprocation of service and acknowledgement. So first I'll briefly mention on like this last point of the Prabhupada is saying that this is a continuous transcendental competition between the Lord and the devotees. And that's also, that point itself is also amazing, that like we see competition in the material world means simply competing for material resources for exploitation, to satisfy our own senses, whereas in the spiritual world there is also competition, transcendental competition, but what's the nature of that as we hear here? It's simply to try to please the other person more and more, and eternally it goes on like that. So Ganesham Prabhu, he gave one beautiful, in like last year at the beginning of the CC classes, when he explained the internal reasons for Krishna's appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and one of these was to taste, in the role of a devotee, to taste Krishna's sweetness, because Krishna himself is the reservoir of that sweetness. Obviously, in his role as Krishna, he exhibits it and gives it, as we say here, through smiling, for example, to the devotees. So he wanted to taste it himself also. That's why he came in the mood of Srimati Radharani as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Ganesh Prabhu was beautifully explaining so how that, because before we mentioned that devotional service is unique because it's not like merchandise. It's not that the devotees don't expect anything in return. They simply want to please Krishna selflessly. They do the service. but there is kind of an merchandise or kind of an exchange is there, and I'll briefly try to explain that again. So the love, the devotee, what does he give to the Lord? He renders devotional service, but what is the aspect that Krishna really wants from that? Like he says, Patram pushpam palam toyam yomi bhaktya prayachidi tadatam bhaktya paritam vashnami prayatatmanaha. That where this famous verse where Krishna so many times mentions the word bhakti, that you offer me just a little water, leaf, a flower, but do it with devotion. So which shows all of these things, they're very insignificant. So he doesn't want anything else in the devotional service other than actually our love for him. It's simply a way to express our love. So in that way we can understand the devotees, what they give is they give their love. And what does Krishna give in return? Because he relishes that love, and by relishing that love, his beauty increases, and what he gives to the devotee is his sweetness, like through smiling, for example, as we hear it here today. So, and that goes on eternally, that the devotee expresses his love through devotional service, and Krishna exhibits his sweetness to the devotee. And actually, one point which I forgot to mention before, that I didn't come to that yet. So I'll go back to that quickly, about how one might think that with our material tendency, that if you take darshan of the Lord only of one particular bodily part, that is kind of impersonal, right? Like if you would do with another normal, ordinary person, and you stare at his feet or his hands or whatever, it would feel real, like you have to look into the eyes. So, but the Lord, to take darshan of the Lord in such a way, it's not impersonal, because like one reason is that is explained Lord Brahma's famous verse, of which we sing every morning, Angani yasya sakalendya vrittimanti pashyanti panti kyalanti chiram chiganti. So that the Lord senses are interchangeable. He can perform any activity with any of his senses, and so he can, which also shows he can reciprocate directly with any of his bodily parts perfectly with the devotee, like exhibiting his sweetness and accepting the service. So there's, of course, still we always like to look into Gopinath's face also, because that's like Bhava Bhushan Prabhu was yesterday nicely from CC explaining that the face is the king of the moons, and then within that, then the eyes are the ministers of the king. So of course the face is always special, but still with any of his parts, it's not impersonally, can perfectly reciprocate. And Ganesh Prabhu explained there back then that also similarly, actually, even the devotees can exhibit kind of such an amazing thing of having interchangeable senses, even though generally we don't. Namely, by he described how then this, in like of those high ecstatic devotees, how it can happen, how they take darshan, and how they take in that sweetness which Krishna gives to them in reciprocation for their devotional service. So, he described that there's 5 types of sweetness, namely from the different senses, starting with the eyes. So, explaining, if you by seeing Krishna with the 2 eyes become overwhelmed, and with ecstatic love, and actually then all the 6 senses, by 6, including the mind, start to see Krishna. So there he was explaining similar as Krishna can do anything with any sense. Also, the devotees actually, they're so overwhelmed by Krishna's beauty that it's not enough for them, like we heard yesterday, the gopis, they transcendentally chastise Lord Brahma for having created only 2 eyes, and then even on top of that eyelids. So they are not satisfied with just seeing with their eyes, but then actually all the senses see Krishna. And then the devotee becomes overwhelmed in ecstatic love, faints, so he falls on the ground. Then lying on the ground, obviously he's close to Krishna's lotus feet, so then the fragrance, transcendental fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet enters his nostrils. In that way he regains consciousness, and with again all his senses, because it's so amazing, his fragrance, that it's not enough to just smell with the nose, so all the senses smell Krishna's fragrance, and then thus again they get overwhelmed, being faint, and then next comes Krishna playing his flute, so that the flute sound enters the ears of the devotee, so that he wakes up again. Like Prabhupada many times says, that's one way of how we can understand hearing is most powerful, that even if you're fast asleep, simply by some noise you can be woken up. So hearing is always there. So here also we see how then again this sound enters the ears and they wake up, and then again with all the senses here, and it goes on like this to then eventually to touching Krishna, and or then to the tongue, to tasting Krishna's sweetness as well. So yeah, and in that way, like here Ganesh Prabhu had explained that Krishna is thinking, how can it be like Srimati Radharani, if she sees me, my beauty, then she simply faints. I never feel like that by seeing her. It gives me, because on the other hand, he gets also great pleasure in seeing her beauty, particularly, or like similarly, but not as intense as for her, because her love is the greatest for Krishna. She's the personification of love, Ladini Shakti, and of pleasure thus. So, and yeah, so that's why he then think, and further, like he pointed out, that she even faints simply by, not only by seeing me directly, but she even faints by seeing a tamal tree, which reminds her of me, because of the dark complexion. So in that way, Krishna is thinking, oh, she must get so much more pleasure from serving me than I get from being served. So, and that's one of the reasons, internal reasons why Krishna descends as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And yeah, so that's, and we hear that also in, like also with the other gopis, how this amazing exchange of like Bhushan was yesterday mentioning how they cursed in their ecstatic love of seeing Krishna's beauty, they cursed Lord Brahma for not being, and not for only creating two eyes. They rather he should create hundreds, thousands, millions of eyes for them to more sufficiently be able to see Krishna's beauty, which is true. That's obviously in their how intensely they love Krishna, how overwhelmingly beautiful they perceive Krishna, as amazingly beautifully how they perceive Krishna. But at the same time, also we know that actually all their concern is Krishna's pleasure. It's not like that they selfishly want to see Krishna's beauty. That's rather we know that that anything they do and think and feel, it's all simply for Krishna's pleasure. So in that way, if you consider, then actually that's just an expression of their appreciation of Krishna's beauty, but actually they wouldn't want to have so many eyes, because they would know it doesn't look beautiful if you have eyes all over your body. Rather, you know, they dress themselves as beautiful and all of that simply because they know if Krishna sees their beauty, then he will be happy. And actually, and it's so amazing, like similar here, we hear today's purport with the smile. This reciprocation we see there also in the highest perfection between Krishna and the gopis, that when they decorate their bodies and everything as beautiful, because they know by Krishna gets happy by seeing them as beautiful. So when Krishna sees them, he gets so pleased, and by his being so pleased, then his beauty increases, you know, and by the gopis seeing Krishna becoming happy from seeing them, and by seeing Krishna's beauty increasing, then their beauty increases, and then Krishna seeing them even more beautiful, then his pleasure and thus his beauty increases, and yeah, and so forth. We could keep talking that till eternity, because that's what goes on eternally. That's obviously completely inconceivable. Like as we said, we are proud of our tiny, insignificant beauty. And so that's one reason why I'm thinking when we hear of such topics, if we are not in a proper consciousness, we might think like, or even many times in some detailed descriptions of Bhagavatam, for example, we might feel like, yeah, what's the point? Okay, I understand, Krishna, you're the Supreme Lord, you're the most beautiful, all attractive. Okay, yes, I understood, so let's move on. Because why is that? Because we are still envious. Sometimes might feel too much to us that, okay, I understand, I accept I'm not as beautiful as you, but now, okay, let's focus on something else. But actually, yeah, if we get purified, we will be able to appreciate it more. Like we were saying yesterday, that we might, like those elevated topics, like I'm not at all qualified to speak of that even to here, but still, having heard it from authorities, and some little appreciation we can have, and it does not only purify us, but as who was mentioning, that it also does instill slowly more and more a desire, at least, that we want to become like that. That we understand, okay, I'm so far away from that, but that's what real life is about. That's perfection of existence. That's what we ultimately are here for. To have such exchange with Gopinath, not to do a little service and feel proud, go in front of Gopinath and thinking, hey, Bayan, you're not helping me better, I'm trying so hard, or anything like that. No, you give yourself to the unfathomable highest degree, and you never expect anything back from Gopinath, but he forces upon you his sweetness to the highest degree, that we know that there's those kind of dynamic exchanges. So, yeah, there be more things to talk about, but I think we'll stop here. Yeah, any comment or question? Okay. Thank you for listening. Krantarachi Bhagavatam Ke Cha, Srila Prabhupada Ke Cha.